So just a little bit about our setup. So Angelica, she is a writer and also I like to say specialist in pre-production. She's really awesome at what she does, preparing films to even just get started. There's a lot that goes into that. And then Jason, he is a director, editor, so he does all the making and the post-production that is very important.
I think we're good. We're ready.
Okay, awesome. And then if anybody has any questions, we will have our mics with us. Are you guys okay with questions during? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to ask questions during. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
You seem unsure, but okay. All right, sweet.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can raise your hands, and then either Alexa or I will come to you with our mics. Awesome.
Perfect. So thank you guys for coming. I'm going to have Jason start, actually, but I just wanted to say thanks for coming to the Filmmaker Meetup. Like they said, we're going to talk a little bit about our backgrounds, how we got into film, and some of the projects that we've made. I think we both have videos to show you, so we'll go ahead and do that and get some behind-the-scenes looks at what we've done. And then definitely want to do a Q&A, so for sure have some questions. Think about that, because we are a resource for you guys. Because if you're starting out in the film industry, or if you just have general questions about what it's like to be on a film set, please ask us. We're here for that reason. So, all right. We'll start with Jason.
Hi. My name's Jason. I guess, I went to school for this. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in school, but so I started undeclared, and I found out that mass communications and journalism was a thing, and that multimedia production is a job that people can do, because I never kind of knew what those were back when I was growing up. I thought they all included labor, and being an artist or whatever was flight of fancy. But I found this thing, and then I was like, oh, maybe I could at least make something for a job in news or media in some way. And so I graduated with that degree in 2009. Thereafter, the economy crashed, which who'd have thought would happen multiple times over since then. And I got a job at the Apple Store, luckily. I actually met this guy right here, Dom.
Nice.
Who, he's been a great guy. But yeah, we worked together there at the Apple Store for a few years. And, that was great too, because then I got to meet the community. I got to meet other people like you who are starting out in film, and I got to get Macs for cheap because we got an employee discount. So highly recommended if you can do that. If you can get a job adjacent to your field, Horn Photo, Best Buy, Target. Maybe not. I don't know. Target,
No.
Boycott.
Yeah,
whatever.
maybe not Target.
Do that. It's good. You'll talk to people. You'll meet other creatives. And that was a great experience. But a college buddy of mine, eventually, he got a job at Lego, and he was like, I'm going to leave this company called Blair Media. Do you want to work there? And I go, yeah, that's great. And so he's like, yeah, apply, do some freelance work for him, maybe do a couple editing jobs. And then they'll see if they like you. And I guess they liked me, because I got offered a job as their post-production, basically, department. They were a lot smaller then. Because it was basically just me in an office. And I would edit all their projects and finish them, do the mixing, do the all the stuff that's required to actually turn film, video, into a product, right? And that was great. Blair Media grew. They moved offices a couple times when I was there. We grew team, our post-production team. And I learned a ton there about how commercial production works, how independent production works, how the freelance world works. I think my big takeaway, though, was that there's only so much growth that can happen within certain sized businesses, And while I was filling a niche, I didn't really feel like I could grow beyond that. And so that's where the freelance life called to me, because, working in the industry a little bit, I learned that most people are gig workers. They don't work full employment at a place. Now they're, brought on for a job as an employee. for tax and payment purposes and all that kind of stuff. But usually that employment's temporary, right? Outside of that, you could just be a day player, just like some people hire a plumber for a day. Some people hire a camera operator for a day, or a director, or a gaffer. Fill in the blank. You fill that niche. So although my main focus was editing at Blair Media, I knew that I could do those other things. It's easy enough. Maybe I could even grow. Maybe I could start producing. Maybe I can get my own clients. Maybe I could do a studio, an agency, production company, whatever you want to call it. I still don't know. I'm still growing, still finding out what that's going to be like. But that's kind of where I've landed now. So it's been a long journey to get from there to here. But really, it was just a bunch of small steps of starting out where I was comfortable and what people knew me as an editor, as a motion graphics guy. I started there and, found that could only get me so far. So I bought a camera, and then people started to see me as a shooter. People started to see me on set more, and that I knew how to light, that I knew how to set up a C-stand. I could carry sandbags at the least. So I've done that. I've slated, I've done sound, done a lot of different things. But each of those steps was, great in showing me the process and how different commercial productions are ran, how different independent productions, different narratives, TV shows, music videos. I think if you name it, I've probably worked on something adjacent to it at this point. It gave me that experience that then now, if a client calls me, I can kind of cater the job to what they need, right? Sometimes I struggle with that because we're in a smaller market. And so when you tell a small business that, it would be great to do this for $1,000, they're like, what? That's crazy. But I'm like, well, that covers me and another person at least. I don't really like to do one-man band gigs as much anymore. But I mean, I could get them out there for $500, and they're like, oh, my nephew will do it for $50. And then it's like, okay, well, why are we even talking? So it's a struggle out there as a freelancer, but if you just stick with it, it's definitely something that's possible. I feel like that's a pretty good summary of kind of where I'm at today. I don't want to take too much time. I want to leave some space for the floor. So I'll just show my reel so you can kind of see. It's not like a full reel. Basically, I haven't edited together a full reel in the past 5 or 6 years that I've been freelance. But I had a client recently who was a little bit larger, and they go, we just want to see some of your work, right? So I cobbled together some of the stuff that I've done in the past that included mostly interviews because that was kind of catered for the client in this case. I knew I'd be filming a lot of interviews, a lot of B-roll. So I found all the stuff that I had. I cut together some of my favorite stuff. And I also tacked on some documentary narrative stuff that I've done, mostly from the film Road on Drift, because the other stuff that I did was kind of learning by doing, and it's not really great. But Road on Drift was fun. It was kind of a period piece, and it's a docu-narrative, right? So it's fictional moments from the past that are based on a real person's life. And that was also catered for the client because we would be kind of doing a little bit more cinematic storytelling, as they say. So anyways, here it is.
super cool.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about my journey getting here as well. So similar to Jason, I also went to Fresno State. I have a degree in multimedia journalism, or multimedia production was the emphasis. It's a journalism degree. And when I first started school, I genuinely thought I was going to be a news reporter. I thought I was going to do print journalism, which is crazy, but I did think that. And I tried pretty much everything in journalism. I decided to try radio journalism after a while. I did like an NPR fellowship. I basically tested the waters of journalism and decided I don't think I'm cut out for that because it was intense. But when I was taking those classes, I took an advanced production class at Fresno State, and that's when I discovered that, honestly, I loved producing, which is kind of wild. As people may know, producing is the least glamorous job in filmmaking, I would say, but it is very important. And so I took on that role in a lot of my projects in that class, and I discovered that I really liked it, that I had a knack for it, and I just started making stuff. And producing kind of applies to any kind of media project that you want to do. It's essentially just project management. You're deciding how to make something and where to start. So I did that at Fresno State, got my degree, and I graduated with a degree that I kind of didn't know what to do with. And I was also I worked at a radio station for a while, so technically I did use my degree. I was the on-air announcer for KVPR. I did the weekend, the All Things Considered shows, so I was on there. If you ever heard me, I was terrible at it. So, but I did that, and it was very fun. And so I was working at restaurants, I was doing a lot of things, but I also didn't want to stop making things, because in the studio production class that I took, or actually advanced production class that we took, I got to make a short film. And so when I made that short film, I sort of just fell in love with filmmaking in general, and I wanted to learn as much as possible about it. So I started watching films, consuming that like crazy, learning as much as I could, watching videos about production and how to do that, how to structure it, how to plan it. And then I partnered up with a production partner for a while, and we started our own company called Anthophila Productions, where we did our short film production. So we produced about 3 independent short films on 0 budget. We basically lost money on every single set. We were very scrappy and very resourceful, and that's how I found out about CMAC, by the way, because CMAC is where you can access camera gear and lighting gear and all the professional equipment you might need to make a short film. And I'm not just saying that because I work here now, but I also seriously built my career off of CMAC gear. So I produced 3 independent short films, Rochambeau, Auditorium 13, and Heads or Tails. Rochambeau and Heads or Tails are essentially the same duo of criminals, lovable criminals, and those were micro short films. So the first one I did was like 3 minutes long, and then the second one we did was Auditorium 13, and essentially that one was the challenge of my career at this point, where we did a horror short film. It was 14 minutes long. We filmed in the Maya Cinemas, so we had a giant space to work with. We got access to it when it was shut down during COVID. We exchanged a role on set with the manager, so he was in our film. He was terrible at acting, but he was a great person, a great sport with it all. We exchanged a role on set for him to be on camera, while we also gained access to the entire space. Like, he literally let us do whatever we wanted. So that was kind of how scrappy we were in the beginning. We were essentially trading roles and trying to make deals with people. So that's kind of where I started, was that really scrappy independent short film space. And obviously you all probably know when you create something, you look back and you're like, oh, that was my early work, but I still am super proud of those, because we were doing that in our spare time. Volunteer crew members who were just friends of ours that I'd met in college, things like that. And that's something that Jason touched on, was like, you meet creatives everywhere, so you really want to keep contact with those people, because you don't know who's going to be willing to do a short film just for free and food, So that's where I started, and I was still not able to make it into a professional setting in this space. I was still working at restaurants, coffee shops, things like that, as you do as a creative, So I had multiple jobs at a time, and I remember I was just making these just for fun and just building a reel and putting it on my LinkedIn just to kind of show what I could do. And as just throwing it out there in the universe. And I actually got recruited off of my LinkedIn, which is kind of wild. I thought it was a scam. But I was recruited off of my LinkedIn to work at an ad agency. So they saw my work. They asked me if I'd ever wondered if I could do apply my skills in an advertising space. I answered honestly and I said no, but then I was like, you know what, we should try it because I hate this restaurant job. So I was like, I'm gonna do it. So I got hired as a copywriter and video producer for JP Marketing. And I was there for about a year, which I essentially produced dozens and dozens of commercial work and testimonials and campaigns, and I was basically moving on from making a short film every couple of months to making commercials every week, which was like mini short films, essentially. So my production skills amped up because I was the producer and the director, and I was on set. I was often writing these commercials, so did a lot in the commercial space, learned a lot. I got burnt out. It was tough. It's very tough, but I wasn't burnt out on the work level. I was burnt out on that creativity because I really enjoyed being creative and being able to add my creativity to the work. And you don't always get to do that with client work, which you want the client to pick the most creative option. They usually go with the safest one, which is frustrating, but also their choice. They're paying for it, So I say all that to say that I did get a job in the industry, and I was able to work based off of my independent short films, which is kind of insane that they were produced for nothing. And then after that, I returned to filmmaking after I left the agency, and I decided to do documentary filmmaking. And I actually was a recipient of the Big Tell grant, so I produced a 5-minute documentary film with the Big Tell 2 years ago, and it's called To Plant a Garden, which is right up there for you. Those are all the what are they called, thumbnails for my YouTube videos. So these are all the documentaries and all of the short films that I made. I even briefly did a music video. But the commercial work taught me a lot, and then when I went into documentary filmmaking, I got to combine my love of journalism, which is just essentially storytelling, and my love of filmmaking, and so I kind of made it, I kind of figured out that that was where I really enjoyed all aspects of storytelling, was telling real stories and getting to use my journalism degree and my love of short filmmaking and combining those. So I've made so far 2 short documentary films, and then I was an editor on one of them. And I have worn a lot of hats. We're gonna talk probably a little bit about how many hats we've worn in just a second. But that's basically how I got here. I became a teaching artist at CMAC, and now I basically just help everybody who comes through make their projects because I weirdly love pre-production, and I'm gonna make you guys love pre-production too because it's very helpful. And a lot of people don't like to do it, but it really does affect the way that your film comes out, the experience on set, whether people wanna work with you again or not. Pre-production will help with that a lot. So I'm a big proponent of pre-production, not the most glamorous thing, but it does get you a lot of repeat crew members, a lot of options. So that's kind of how I got here. I don't know if that covered everything, but I think so. I'm gonna show you guys 2 videos. They're very short, and they are actually behind-the-scenes videos. So while we were also making these short films, I'm never in any behind-the-scenes footage because I'm always filming like behind-the-scenes stuff or taking photos, so that's kind of like the curse of doing that. But I did cut together some behind-the-scenes videos, and I think it kind of showcases like how scrappy we are and how we were just learning how to do things. And you'll see how small our crew is because it's ridiculously small. So we'll go ahead and watch 2 of those, and then we're gonna just discuss more together about like our journey and what we've learned.
Camera speed.
Sound speed.
Action.
Oh, okay, she's suspicious of that.
Take 2. Action.
Whoa, that got dark real quick.
Yeah, bro, I'm not trying to talk about dying right now.
That's a lot.
I love life.
Yeah. Damn, my bad.
What?
I just messed up.
I cut.
I couldn't drive.
I have peg legs.
Oh.
Yeah, bro. Come on. Oops. How do you put that out?
You get out of the car, you can just put it in the pocket.
Don't walk out with a gun in my hand.
Well, not even that, just like...
Redo it.
god, this is fucking. That's.
Okay. All right. I like it. Good. Good.
All right. Do you guys see what we used instead of a dolly? It was just the cart from CMAC that is like the equipment cart. And then we were trying to seat our cinematographer on there, and we're like, we need a little higher. Like, how do we do this? And I had this like bag of potting soil in my trunk, and we just put it on there and created like a little makeshift dolly. So very scrappy, kind of ridiculous, but it worked. You know, we got our shot. So, all right. And then I just have one more, and then we'll go ahead and discuss a few more things with you guys. This is the horror short film that we made.
Hey, did I overhear you say that Auditorium 13 started up on its own last night?
You can get the reaction shot, because the reaction shot is going to have 13 in frame with you, so I want you to
Sorry, are we doing this line first?
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
Okay.
You should really be scared. Johnny.
And someone's calling you.
So that one actually, weirdly, it every Halloween it kind of pops off on YouTube. So we have over like 50,000 views on YouTube for that. And it's not like the most amazing short film. Like obviously you guys saw the dude with the hands. Like the entity could have been scarier, but we see the analytics, and when we first see the entity come in, they all like people turn off the video. So we know it's scary enough, you know. And then it also gets views. So it's been kind of nice to see that succeed, as really scrappy as that was. Like it was very intense to make that, but it worked. So we kind of have a few topics we want to talk about, like a little discussion between us two, and then we'll throw out to questions if we have some time. But yeah, so we have a lot of BTS stuff up here. Do you want to kind of start it off?
Yeah, I'm just gonna grab the mic. Is that okay?
Yeah,
because
it's kind of.
I don't like this whole like leaning over
Leaning
thing.
forward.
You know, I kind of. Gosh, this is such a cooler vibe now. Yeah, so that was amazing. So producing, pre-production.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
Should
you
I
have
join
way
you?
more
I feel weird
experience in
now.
that. Yeah, so I feel like, what does that mean to you? Right.
Producing?
Like
Okay.
producing,
Yeah.
pre-production, right? Like, because I don't know, like, how do you see that
Yeah. So
as a picture?
producing to me is kind of like, I actually didn't know what a producer was. I had to figure out what my title was on set because I just was the problem solver is what I thought I was doing. You are basically the one who hires the team. You're the one who makes sure every detail is accounted for, that you've scheduled things out, you've locked in locations, you've locked in props, you've locked in people in general. So you pretty much do it all. And I think like the way that I view it, I think I heard someone talking about this, like a director or producer that I was watching on YouTube. But they basically said it's like you're planning a party. and you have to make sure everything goes right. And your job as a producer, my job as a producer, is that I do all of this work up front, often months in advance before we even arrive on set. And my job is to make sure that everything is in place so that the people I've hired, my team, so my cinematographer, my director, my actors, that all they have to do when they get on set is their job. They just have to lend their creative talents. They don't have to think about anything. I've thought about everything. I've thought about the cones on the street. I've thought about calling the police to make sure that they know that we're going to be holding a gun on set, that it's just a fake gun and we're just shooting a film. They're already on standby. I already called them. I've got location release. I've got all the paperwork you could ever ask for. But my job is to make sure it's all prepared so that people only have to wear one hat when they get on set, ideally. Because being a creative and wearing a million hats will take away from your creative talent, in my opinion. So that's my job as the producer.
Yeah, I feel like in my creative mess of a brain, right? Like when I try to produce things, I don't necessarily have that big of a picture of it sometimes. I just kind of know what I want to get at the end of it, right?
Right.
And I kind of know what I want it to look like. But I feel like I just have to make so many lists, and I make spreadsheets, and I just write as many things down, and I try to categorize it all into little things, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of lists. There's literally a binder. By the time you get on set, I have a binder for you. Are you ready? Are you guys ready? Here's your binder. There we go.
Yeah, and Welch's Fruit Snacks is a line item.
We did talk about this. This is very important.
Craft is important.
It's craft services. Craft services is super important. And if you guys like anything other than Welch's Fruit Snacks, that's wrong. Sorry. That is a staple on set.
Yeah, no great value. I'm sorry. I'm not. I understand, but just spend the extra $1.
Yeah.
Just if you can't spend the extra $1, then I'm gonna think ill of what else you're saving money on.
Yeah.
So
I have a question for you. So what sets have you been on where you've had to wear more than one hat?
Every set.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, I'm just kidding. I've had some sets where I got to show up and I was a PA, and it was great. I feel like we were on that set together. Yeah. So I mean, I think I was first AC on actually. I was just pulling focus. That was great. But even then, you gotta do all this other stuff with lighting and all these things. But the one time I was thinking of was it was my first day on a show, Undercover Billionaire. They were filming here in Fresno, and they had a PA drop out. So I got to fill in for I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks or something, 4 weeks or I can't remember. But I remember I showed up on the day, and they kind of hired more than they needed because they weren't sure if anybody here knew what a PA was. And that's fair. But we were just kind of standing around, and the production coordinator, who's kind of the PA's boss, is there at the van, and we're all just kind of hanging out, listening to a walkie-talkie, and I'm like, there's so much cool stuff happening. How do I get by the cool stuff? And I was just like, hey man, is it okay if I just go hang out by camera department or something? And they're like, yeah, that's cool. And so I was like, great, finally, yes. And so I just went and I found the ACs. So it's a reality show, and usually every camera operator gets their own AC, but on this one there were 2 ACs for 4 camera operators. So luckily I found the 2 ACs that were there, not to be confused with second AC or first AC. And then anyways, and then I just kind of talked to them, and I was like, hey, you guys need any help? Can I carry something for you? Carry your bags? Can I get you a water or whatever? Just being too much on the first day. And then the next day, showed up, checked in, PA stuff, standing around, rinse and repeat. Hey, can I go hang out with the camera department? Hung out with the camera department, hung out with the ACs, and eventually they just started handing me stuff. Eventually, they started handing me lights to set up. Eventually, the DP was like, hey, you know stuff about light bulbs. Hey, where's a hardware store? We need to light these China balls and set them up in the backyard. Do you know where to find some China balls? And I was like, yes, sir. I know exactly what you need. I had no idea where to get China balls in town. I had no idea where to get regular tungsten light bulbs that he wanted. But I figured it out. I ended up getting 5 sets of decorative living room China balls, which are those paper lanterns, by the way. So yeah, I found some 5-packs at Hobby Lobby, and then I went to Home Depot, and they still had incandescent light bulbs to buy at the time. So I got those, and basically saved the day. I was a set hero for the DP, and it was so cool. But yeah, so never, to answer your question.
That actually makes a lot of sense, yeah. I was explaining kind of a weird scenario that I've had the experience of, is that as a producer, because I didn't start as a PA. Like I didn't start, like I started in college, I made my first short film. One of them that I don't tell people I made well, I won't tell you what it's called either. It's one of my short films that I don't even know where to find it. Like that's good, that's a good thing. But I started out as the director and producer on my first short, and then the next short I did, I was just the producer, first AD on set, I guess. I don't even know what I am on set. I'm just a hovering person. I do all of it. Yeah. I guess first AD would be the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's more common when you're putting on your own productions, though.
Yeah.
Right? Like you kind of have to step into those roles.
Exactly, because we have a very small crew, and like I'm wearing 10 hats is what I'm doing on set. And that's also a good, like, it taught me a lot about different departments. Like I've never exclusively worked in one department. We don't have departments on our sets. We just have 3 people. And like usually it's just the cinematographer, the director, the actors, and then like me, and then 2 PAs. We do have PAs, which is lovely. They're so helpful. But that is like my experience of I've only ever experienced being on my own sets by the time I reached a commercial production, because I was producing all of the short films that I was making, and then I was editing all of those short films. And something weird that happens is like when you wear so many hats, it almost just feels like, they're not part of the creative process. It took me forever to admit that I was the editor of all my films and that was an actual credit I could claim, because I was so busy doing all the pre-production that it was just one other part of finishing this project that I didn't even think about as like a full-on creative like gig that you can have. You can have that as just a skill, which was super weird to me.
It's like that picture of you holding the boom there. It's like I could just imagine you're like, oh yeah, someone needs to hold the boom.
Exactly. It was just like out of necessity. Like you just kind of fill in the gaps, and you're all team players, and someone needs to go grab water for the actor. Like we just would help each other, and like that's really the community that we build on set. Like I'm a big proponent of like having a healthy culture on set. I'm planning that party, right? This is my party. Only nice people are allowed at my party, okay? Otherwise you can leave. And that's kind of what I think is important, because like we talked a little bit about like early stages of production, or like early productions that we may have worked on, where like how do you get people to come back and volunteer their time? How do you get them to stay with you on like an 8-hour shoot day? And like, it's a lot, and all you're doing is feeding them. They're there volunteering, right? And the answer is you make it a worthwhile experience. You do enough work beforehand so that, one, they're not overworked on set. They're not in charge of finding lights when they don't know where they are. Like, that's not their job. I've already thought about
exactly
that.
Where they were.
Yeah, well, you figured it out. That's all that matters. You're a creative problem solver. That's all that matters. But I had not experienced other people's sets, and to this day, I'm still really interested in how that goes. I've only been on commercial sets where I was the producer, so I hired the team. Like my sets run as smoothly as I can make them run. Like I joke about it and it's not really a joke, but people think I'm joking when I say I schedule in time for people to breathe. Like I'm scheduling it all. Like I'm scheduling the breaks, I'm scheduling extra time for when we do a company move, which is just taking all of your equipment and moving to another part of your set. Sorry, I'm not as good at this as you are with the microphone. I think the stand was good for me.
You don't have to hold it.
All right, well, I have to match your energy. That's what's going on here. All right, so basically, it was just like I want people to get out of this like as much as you can, but I want to give you advice of like showing up and being a team player. That really does get you back on sets. I really didn't hire people back again who were not great on set, who had bad attitudes, or who treated anyone badly. And I may not say that to them on set because we're there to do a job, and I am forever professional, invested in getting that. All of my months of work, we need to film that on the day. If you're causing problems on the day, I may not approach you right away. I just may not hire you again. So that's sort of what happens on sets. Like, people like to discount producers like as not super important, that they want to, ingratiate themselves with the directors or be really in with the camera crew because they're all the ones actually filming. But the boss on set is usually the producer. And so if I'm also wearing a hat that day where I'm technically a PA because I'm running around grabbing people things, and you mistake me for a PA and you treat me badly on set, hey, I'm not emailing you to come on my next set. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not the vibe, right? So we want to make sure that this, because what we do is inherently fun. You're making a film. Like, why don't you want to have fun while you're making the film? Why do we have to bring so much stress and anger and all of that? Like, ideally, you'd not want any of that, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You have different experiences than me, so.
No, I mean, it is true. It is 100% true. But, you know, the sad thing is, right, like the lower the budget, oftentimes the bigger the egos and like the more stress that there is. And so it's really easy to jump on a set where you think it's like, oh, cool, it's independent. It's just some guys in town. We're going to make a thing. And then it turns out that like the producer is not like you. And they think that this is just going to be their Oscar-winning Sundance entry film or something like that and freak out. And, you know, and it's really easy to fall into that trap too sometimes, you know, because like you have a client breathing down your neck. You have a producer like you behind the screen. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure the crew is all getting the stuff we need. So like, you know, I find it really helpful to just like remember to breathe sometimes, you know, because there's like a lot of things going on. And
and that has been appropriately scheduled, that breath.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to schedule it. It's super important, like meditation, naps after lunch. I'm a big fan of siestas.
There's no time for that.
No, I did want to talk about though, like you mentioned like the chain of command kind of thing, like the hierarchy, right? Like that is something to, I think, practice even at the smallest of productions when you have like 3 or 4 crews. It's almost even more important, right? Because as much as we talk about wearing a lot of hats, it helps to know who's wearing what hat. You know, and even if you've got like 3 on your elbow, at least I know that you're the person that I can go to for that thing. And that at the end of the day, this is going to be your call, you know? So even if I have like a 2 or 3 person crew on a thing, like I try to make sure that everybody kind of knows like exactly what's expected of them. And that's the job they signed up to do, you know? Like if I'm going to make a phone call and I'm going to hire somebody, I'm going to give them like, this is it. Yes, we're calling it a swing position because, like, you know, technically in the union there is no such thing as like a swing PA or like a swing grip. Like you're either a grip or you're a PA, you know. And I have worked a union gig where it's like that was my one thing, so I do have to correct. It never was a lie. I'm sorry. I try not to lie, but yeah. So you know, sometimes you will find yourself in those positions, but that's where it's like kind of good to practice these things at a smaller level, right? Because now you know, like, oh, right. Even on my smallest indie sets, like I was just a camera op, but I know that first I'm going to talk to the DP about like an idea or a creative thing, right? And then the DP is going to run that by the director if they think that they want to do it. And then the director is going to be like, oh man, you know, that sounds really cool, but it also sounds expensive. I got to talk to the producer, you know? And then, you know, it goes up. That way you don't just have a camera operator like, hey, what if we just blow up this car instead? That would be cool, right? And then like then the actor hears it and then they're like, yeah, let's blow up the car. And then the sound guy hears it and he's like, what, we're blowing up a car now? And then everybody freaks out and it's just madness and chaos. And then you're over here as the producer like, who said we're blowing up a car? We do not have TNT in the budget.
That is definitely a nightmare. Yeah. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. I'm sorry. But I'm actually interested in like, so you had a completely different like entry point into like the film industry. And I would say you reached like, you've done feature films, right? So yeah.
I guess you could call them that. They're like independent features. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
not like Marvel.
Oh, okay, well, but you've
But I did work with a guy from Marvel.
You had the experience of like starting out on set. That's really cool, by the way. Maybe talk about that.
You guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
They were there.
All right. Well, cool. That is awesome. The question I'm trying to ask you is that how did you feel about like moving up? Like you recently directed your own like short film, right? For the film race, 72-hour film race. And you did the cinematography. Like how did it feel kind of being in that arena? Because I don't know if you did that in other sets.
One of the like secrets that is this televised?
It's not live.
Good. If it's recorded, no, I'm just kidding.
It is recorded.
But like, you know, just don't tell my clients this, but sometimes I'll just try things on their, you know, like jobs that I get. It's kind of like the undercover billionaire thing, right? Where I'm like a PA and I just show up and I'm like, well, you know, maybe I could try to moonlight as a camera assistant, you know? You just kind of find opportunities and try to make the most of them is what I'm saying, right? And so my goal in doing these things was not because I, like no offense to PAs, but not that like I want to be a PA or anything like that for the rest of my life. You know, I kind of want to direct. And so taking that small step every moment to kind of get to the point where, like, not only do I know how to do the things, but I know how I want to be when I'm doing those things. And I think there's a big distinction, right? Because as a ferocious young man, I probably would have came out the gate and been a lot more arrogant, right? And I'm still pretty arrogant sometimes, but I feel like it's like now I kind of know how to ease the arrogance a little bit and just still try to communicate what I'm thinking or what I want without being just like, well, do it. Why is that hard? You know, like you kind of have to walk other people's path before you realize it's hard, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't even remember your question.
I was like, how did you move up? Like, how did it feel moving? Or actually taking over and doing your, like,
the short film, right?
Yeah.
The short film, yeah. Oh, that's right. It felt like, I mean, we were filming at my house, but it felt like coming home, you know? It felt like this is the mix. The other secret is like, you know, this is a collaborative industry, right? So my buddy Shaggy and we get along very well creatively, and just, you know, we could talk about stuff that's not even film. And we kind of decided to try this whole directing duo partnership kind of thing, right? Where we can bounce ideas off of each other, and then if they click, then we know it's good, you know? Like, because it's one thing to like look into a mirror and just be like, oh, this is awesome. But then it's another when the mirror looks back at you and is like, you know what? That is awesome. And you're like, thanks, man. Nobody else does that every morning? You should. Positive affirmations.
I mean, that sounds nice, yeah.
So Shaggy's my mirror anyway, so
Okay.
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would say like finding
that's
those creative partnerships is probably really helpful. I think I've done that before. I have a lot of people I work with now, like especially in the documentary space. I work with somebody I met at the ad agency that I worked at. So she was the only video person, like the only videographer. So I was the only video producer, which meant that we were sent out as a team often, you know, all the time. So yeah, we work super well together. We have a shorthand, we understand things, we respect the hell out of each other. Like I'm her biggest hype person and she's my biggest hype person. Like we can't say a bad thing about the other person. And it's just like those things, when you find them, it might take a few tries. Like you might work with people who like, oh, this was great, but there's like, you know, some ego involved, or like we have creative differences. Like I've actually had to, is this live also? Okay, wait, I'll just say it. But I've had to fire people off of my set before. And that's rough when you're literally doing it for free. Like, you know, it's kind of a rude thing to say. Like, I know you're volunteering.
And go.
Yeah. I was like, I know you're volunteering, but yeah, I'm going to take this opportunity to recrew my project. Like, and I try to say it as nicely as possible. And there were very much real reasons why that was happening. Like you said, knowing which hat you're wearing is very important. So I had locked the script a month and a half prior, and then we were going to do a camera test, and they didn't show up with a camera, they showed up with script suggestions. And we didn't hire them as writers. We had already written and locked that script down, storyboarded everything. It was planned to a T. Locations, everything, actors locked in. And they were showing up to our camera test with script suggestions. And to their credit, one or two of them were really good. The full page that they gave us, like, it was just kind of the wrong time, right? And it's not because I didn't respect them. It was because, like, this was just not the way this worked. And what are you gonna ask me?
I was just curious how you handled that situation, right? Like, how do you handle that kind of conflict just showing up on your doorstep?
Yeah, so I used to work at Starbucks. I'm not afraid of conflict. I think you can be very nice when you tell people very honest things, and I think it's important in a creative space to provide feedback if people ask for it. So I genuinely didn't want to get into the details of why I wasn't going to keep them on, but this was, we were doing COVID, we were filming during COVID, so we had a lot of requirements. Like we did temperature checks. We were very safe because we needed to be. And this person had a COVID scare, like they were exposed, so we paused production. We were just not gonna mess with that, right? So we paused production, we postponed for a couple weeks, and that was hard to do. Everything was rolling, but we were like, you know, safety is important. So we paused production, and then in that time, me and the director I had on set, we talked about it and how this was an ongoing issue. Like they were They were showing up, they were a duo, but they weren't showing up together, and stuff was happening, and someone dropped out and didn't tell us. And we were like, you know what? So I sent an email. I was like, I understand what's going on. Thank you so much for letting us know you weren't feeling well. I literally said what I said, which is like, we're taking this opportunity to recrew our project. Thank you so much for all the work you've done. I hope you can understand. And then they fired back with extreme anger. So that was when we had to get into the details, because they were like, well, blah, blah, this is like, I've worked on professional sets that haven't even been this intense. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand that. I was like, were you interested in some feedback? And they said, well, I don't think I did anything wrong. I was like, was that a yes? So I went ahead and I was like, I'm just going to give you a few examples. I mentioned the camera test. I mentioned the script suggestions, how the script was locked. I said, also, you have a run and gun style, which is very different than what I do, which is a valid style. I'm not hating on that. That is a real thing, a real skill that people have to do run and gun. My sets are timed to a T. We only have this location, these people for a certain amount of time. You cannot be run and gun on my sets. Like, I'm so sorry. But I give you plenty of time to prep, to plan, to do camera tests, to do lighting setups and test things so that you can be ready on the day of. So I gave him the opportunity to do well, and our creative styles were different. And so that's what I told them.
Well, I was
nice.
I was kind of like, I didn't necessarily want you to open up the whole story about that, but
now I
if
did,
you didn't
so
want to,
too late.
If you didn't want to, I'm sorry.
Right.
But
It's out there.
I was kind of, because that happens all the time on set, right? Where somebody is like showing up and, maybe they'll bring the script suggestions instead of just being there for the camera test, right? Or, maybe there's an ego or a diva on set or something, right? Like the on set things have a way of happening, right? Like my professor at Fresno State, Don Priest.
Yes.
Don Priest, anybody? Shout out to Don Priest. I'm pretty
Priest.
sure he's still out there. Somewhere. In Fresno, what I mean. Not like alive. I know he's alive.
He's alive. He's good.
He's alive. Anyways.
He's awesome.
Active in the community is what I meant. Sorry. He used to say, like, we walked into the studio at Fresno State, right? And he'd just say, like, well, this is day one, get to know it, look around. First thing you need to know is that Murphy lives here, right? And he meant that as in Murphy's Law, right? If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And so, just kind of mentally preparing myself, at least, for like that fact that like this is the plan, but everything's going to change because life is chaos and nobody knows what we're doing on this rock, even though we like to pretend.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of my mantra in a way sometimes when I have a shoot day or something. But do you have any tips on like interpersonal relations, or because you're a producer, you have to call people all the time on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard.
I'm like, oh, I don't know. I got to go direct some things. Like, why don't you go ask them about it? And then I run into a corner, right? Like, that's the shield.
Yes.
But how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's a good point of producers being the shield. Like, you're kind of the people who are out there promoting that film. You're the one calling people, asking them if they'd like to be involved. And the answer is I'm not actually an extrovert. I'm really not. I am an introvert by nature. And I script all my calls, and I script all my emails. And I even have, like, a script for when people say things. I'm like, they answered this. Okay. And then this is the response for that one. Because it's hard. It is, if you have social anxiety or if you have things that are stopping you in any way, you're like nervous. I always tell myself the worst thing they can say is no. And then you just ask the next person. I've been kind of living like through this experience as a filmmaker as like, learn to rest, not to quit. You want to keep trying and keep doing this. And so after a certain amount of time, it gets easier to call people because it's not that I have to repeat to myself, like they might just say no and that's like the worst thing in the world. It's like, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I have a couple other people lined up. If they say no, that's fine. And I have all my scripts already ready because I've called 1 million people by this point. So I'm like, I can do it. But the social stuff is interesting. Like on set, I seem really like I schedule everything, and I do. But then I also schedule for the chaos, which is kind of a weird thing to talk about. But I understand sets, you have to be ready to be nimble. And often the best shots that we've gotten were shots that we didn't plan for, that we had to then move a chunk of our filming time to either the next day or shift things and cut things out. So on set, what I'm doing is I'm the one who knows that schedule in my brain. So if I see them like lingering on a shot that we've done like 5 or 6 takes of, and I only really allotted for like a couple because they said it would be easy. And I'm like, And I walk over there and I'm like, hey guys, like, so do we think we're gonna be ready for the next one soon? How you feeling? They're like, oh, well, we really can't get this shot. I'm like, okay, so what I can do for you is I can offer you a couple more takes, and then I can switch this to a later part in the day, or we can just shoot this tomorrow. Does that sound good to you? And they're like, okay, yeah. So my job is to adapt as well. But that's not their job to know the schedule, right? So I have to be on it. I have to be monitoring the schedule. It's a hard job.
You're like placing a ladder in front of somebody who's trying to climb, and you don't even know where they're going yet, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good analogy. It's basically like I want them to be creative. That's what they're there for. I hired a cinematographer because they see stuff that I don't. Like, there's, it's a super collaborative industry. So I don't claim to know what the camera operator sees and what they can do. I don't have very much camera experience, to be honest. That is for me to hire the best people in that field and then to support them to do that job. Like, that's what you're doing. You're all taking on those roles and supporting each other. And so, there's a lot of stuff you have to plan for, but then, a lot of stuff you have to be flexible with, because you also want the best product, right? You want the best film. And sometimes that means like, okay, we don't have a dolly, but we want to do this follow shot now, so we're gonna figure it out.
get one of these.
Yeah.
These are great.
Yeah,
These are great for
honestly.
that. Or wheelchairs, or skateboards, or
Yeah, there's tons of tips for like low budget, no budget filmmaking. I don't know where you guys are at in your careers or what part you're playing on these sets or what you're doing, but there's so much resources out there. So definitely learn your craft. Like, it is literally a craft. And if you kind of just buy a really nice camera and then all you're doing is doing camera work, that's fine. That's a job. That's amazing. You're in the creative industry. But if you want to be a filmmaker, there's a level of like craft that you have to study. You have to watch films. You have to like love it in your bones, kind of. And it doesn't always love you back, right? Like, it's kind of a rough thing. We had to postpone Heads or Tails like 5 times because it was an outdoor shoot at nighttime in a parking lot, and there was spring showers, and we had to watch the forecast, land directly on our shoot day. Waited a couple days, I was like, oh, I gotta cancel it. And then I canceled it, and then it didn't end up raining that day, and I was so upset. But you have to roll with it. It's a lot. It's just a lot. And honestly, it's frustrating and it's hard sometimes, but it's also really fun. And then you get to say, like, look, I made something. Like, it actually exists. That's really cool. So.
Yeah, and like, I don't know if anybody here is thinking about trying to make this like a career, but I think that kind of philosophy applies to that journey as well, because like you have this plan in your mind. I mean, like, I did my 5, 10, 20 plan back when I got out of college, right? I don't know if I'm on that plan anymore, but I know that it's changed and that I've been open to whatever that becomes, and just kind of hoping for the best, let's say, plan for the best, expect the worst sometime.
It's plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Oh, that's right.
Actually.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best. My bad.
Yeah. Honestly, I think like that's what I do. I think that's why producing comes so easily to me, is because I have major anxiety. So like all I do in my brain is think of the worst case scenario. And so I just sit down and I do that to myself for the full couple months before. I just think of the worst case scenario and I plan to avoid those. So anxiety really helps me in that case. It's actually a superpower sometimes. So.
And then no matter what happens, something's gonna come up.
Yeah.
Lunch place is gonna be closed or something, but
the lunch place is closed. You didn't look up the hours, Jason?
Dude, they had an employee call in sick, cholera, and salmonella outbreak with the iceberg lettuce. I don't know.
Oh man. Yeah, that is like an act of nature, like that's the only thing you can't plan for, is what I realized. I respect Mother Nature so much more now because it canceled my shoot 3 times. So I still got that film. We made actually you can see there's like a cool prop ATM at the bottom. That's a fake ATM that we built out of poster board and jerry rigged some lights in it. And we found a parking lot, and I talked to the guy who owned it, and he let us film in there because apparently banks don't like when you film bank robbery scenes outside of their bank. They don't exactly like that press.
Just rob it for real.
Yeah. Make it real. No, basically, they do not enjoy when you approach them and say, hey, can we use this for a short film? And you just hope that they're not asking you what it's about. And then when they do, you're like, okay, I know this is going to be a no, but all right, I'll tell you what it's about. So I got rejected from a bunch of banks, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it myself. We're going to find a parking lot that looks like a bank parking lot. We're going to build an ATM. And that's how you kind of have to go. Like with independent filmmaking, when you have no money, like there's going to be a lot of no's, but you have to figure out a way to make it happen. And it looks pretty good on camera. I actually was so shocked how it came out. I didn't know if it would look good, but it looks real. So I mean, literally hot glue, guns, and poster board and lights.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try to segue this, and and stay on the topic of making the most with the least. And I noticed the time, so I feel like we should
Last
probably
thoughts.
open it up for questions.
Let's do last thoughts. Do you have
Last
any
thoughts?
last tips for the filmmakers before they ask us questions? If you guys have.
I don't know. I'm a very responsive person. I gotta get fed something to start
Okay.
out with, if you'd like.
Okay, well, I just
you go
have
first.
one last thought. Oh wait, I guess I don't have anything to say. I'm just kidding. No, I do. I would say, it's really hard to know how to make things until you start making them. So be okay with making bad things. That's my biggest advice. Is like, I made a lot of bad things in college, like stuff I don't really tell people I made. I made a lot of bad things. Well, not bad, but I made stuff when I was a producer at an ad agency that I'm not exactly telling everyone I made, right? Like, making things helps you get better at making better things. And I know there are a lot of people who struggle with like imposter syndrome, or I didn't call myself a filmmaker for a really long time. Like, I made like several short films before I said I was a filmmaker. I'd say something random like a creative multimedia storyteller, like I just was like trying not to claim that title because it was scary, and it feels like you can't claim that until you've done like a full-length movie or whatever. And I think you can. You make one film, you're a filmmaker. You make one video, you can call yourself that if you want. Like, I think that, a lot of us get hung up early on. It's like, we don't have the resources, we don't have the crew, we don't have this or that we can't make something. But then start looking for those resources, start looking for those people. Like, start trying to solve those problems and then make something. Because even when it's bad, you've done something that most people don't ever do. Like, they don't ever even get past the point of not having a crew, not having a camera, So if you can get past that, you're already far ahead of most people who don't even get started. So that's my recommendation, is if you're nervous or if you're just learning, just make stuff and don't be afraid. Because I heard one thing, and I'll wrap it up because it's, we're almost done. But I heard one thing where it was like, when you hate the stuff that you work on, like you finish something and you're like, oh, that wasn't that good. Like, it's really like your taste level is up here and your skill level is down here. And that's the frustration you're feeling with your work. It's not that it's not good for your skill level. It totally probably is. Like, but you have to get more skills to reach that taste level, and you most likely will never reach that taste level. A lot of my favorite filmmakers still have problems with their own films. Like, it is just something that you're chasing, always trying to be better, always trying to learn new things. Like, our first short film, we didn't have a big crew, we didn't have a big location. The next one, we're like, let's get a big location, let's have extras. Let's see how crazy that is. And it was crazy. And we challenged ourselves to do it because that's how you learn how to do it, and that's, you can watch a million videos, you can see a bunch of people talk about it, you can come to the Filmmaker Meetups, but like, you have to make something. That's just kind of my own advice.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Cool,
Because,
okay.
it reminds me of one of my sayings, one of my mantras, right? And that's like, if you're scared of it, it's probably good for you, right? I don't know. The second one I had to look up just to make sure I didn't mess up the quote, but it's take chances, make mistakes, get messy. As a child of the 90s, anybody out there, should know that one. And if you don't, then you obviously didn't have a VHS player in your classroom. So look it up later, though.
Okay.
One of my heroes.
I don't know who it is.
No, it's close. It's Miss Frizzle from the
Oh my
Magic School
God.
Bus.
Amazing. Okay.
So anyway, I don't know. I feel like, do we still have time for questions, or do we need to
Yes.
socialize?
We can
or
do
leave,
like
or?
10, 15 minutes, right? Probably? Okay. So does anyone have questions? Oh, yeah. We got a Q&A slide. Sweet.
Oh,
Okay. You were a little early. I'm just kidding.
My question is regarding getting locations. Do you go about it, like, when you reach out to people, do you go by yourself and do you show them, like, the work you do, or do you, like, go with your crew? Because I feel like I get denied a lot when it comes to locations, so
Yeah.
how do you go about that?
Yeah, that one is hard. So I Usually I try to figure out who owns the building, and surprisingly, it's not usually the person you think it is. So depending on where you're trying to go, you find out who the contact person is. I would send an email, and then I would go in with a location, or you have like a production brief usually is what I do. So I'll write a little production brief, which is just a one-page sheet of like, this is my name, this is my production company, this is the film we're trying to make, this is my contact information. And I go in, usually like for the banks, I would go in and ask for the manager and I talk to them. Or for like restaurants, you can go in, you can leave that with someone, and then you can also make calls. So it's kind of like, I go alone, usually. I usually handle the location scouts, but we did a short music video, or we did a music video where we were in public mostly the whole time, like filming on Fulton Street and stuff. And I didn't ask for permission there, but when you are inside or using locations, you have to approach them that way. So I go alone usually. I usually have sent already an email in advance, so hopefully they've read it and heard of me, and then I go in with a paper. And I leave that there, and I'm very friendly when I go in. I'm like, I'm a filmmaker, I'm working on a project, just want to get this to the right person. And then hopefully you meet the person, and you can explain what you're doing, and be like, okay, well, I'll be in more touch with you. Like, can I get your contact info? I'll send full details, and I'll get a location release signed when we're closer to the date, so that you have like a follow-up to do. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. How do you know what locations require like the paperwork? Like, yeah.
Like a location release? Yeah. Probably all locations except for public locations. Like, yeah, I don't know if you have experience with that as well.
That's to protect you.
Yeah.
That's to show that, like, yeah, you had permission there. Some locations won't require it, right? But that's out of ignorance, not out of like procedure, right? Mm-hmm. So you should have the location release forms. You should have the agreement ready to go for them. It kind of goes back to what she was saying. You should have the production brief. You should know exactly what you're going to need out of that location. You should know where people are going to use the restroom, where people are going to park. All the little minimal things like that, right? Like all of that stuff goes in the location agreement, so you guys are in the same page. Mm-hmm, yeah. That way, when like somebody comes over and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing over here? We didn't say you could use our toilet paper."
Yeah, that happens. People are very nosy.
You know.
Like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's to protect you, man.
Yeah. So, and yeah, it's just like I would preemptively just have that on your mind. Like even if it doesn't require it, like you were saying, like you should get one no matter what. Because I actually filmed in the Goldstein's parking lot, like that back lot was where we did our short film. And I thought Goldstein's owned it, but it was the architect who owned the building next to Goldstein's. I don't know if you guys know, it's a bar and tower. And the managers of Goldstein's came out to ask us what we were doing because we were technically blocking traffic out of their parking lot. But we had cones and we had people letting them out after we stopped our takes, so we were fine. But they were angry and they were like, "Oh, did you get permission?" And I whipped out my binder and I showed them the location release, and they're like, "Well, that's not the owner." I was like, "Actually, it is." I was like, "Here's a copy. Feel free to give him a call. He knows what we're doing." And he's like, "Well, the Goldstein's owns it." I was like, "Actually, no. Goldstein's doesn't own it." And then I was like, "Thank you so much for your interest," and I walked away. And like, you can just give them the paper, let them go figure it out somewhere else, and you have that for a reason, because that does happen. People are very nosy.
Yeah, and just as a piece of general advice, right? Like when you're asking anybody for anything in this world, I feel like, right? Like you always want to be as nice as you can, right? And you know, you're usually if you walk into a place, you're going to start talking to somebody who's at the bottom, and you're going to try to find your way at the top. But as you go through those levels, you never know who else you're going to talk to, right? And you never know who else you're going to leave an impression with. So they're never going to be like beneath you or anything like that, right? They shouldn't be. They aren't. Right? These are all people that you're going to be working with whenever you show up there on the day, whether that's just the location people, right? Whoever owns the building, whether it's the neighbors, whether it's your cast, your crew, right? Like just kind of having that mindset as far as like, you know, having good intentions and putting a smile on your face and just treating people right will get you so much farther than just trying to talk to the person at the top. Okay? Because then that person at the top's going to see that too, and they'll think even better of you.
Yeah, and for context, we did go into the bar and let them know what we were doing, but the manager change happened, and someone complained about the parking lot, and someone else came out to talk to us. So that was like, yeah, you want to be nice to people, and you want to let them know what you're doing. And
especially if they're cops.
Oh, yeah, we called the cops before, and we talked to the department. And that's another thing. If you guys are doing any short films that involve weapons, definitely call the police department, and you'll get the runaround on who to talk to. Sometimes going into the departments and talking to them in person is good too. And then being like, I'm a filmmaker, who do I speak to about this? And Fresno doesn't have like a lot of permit information, so I have never had to get a permit, and I'm not sure if you even need one because no one could answer my question about that. So
There is a commissioner that you technically need permission for if you're on a public street under certain conditions, but I feel like we probably talked about locations. a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. If not, we can just keep talking about locations.
First of all, thank you guys for all the info. I wasn't really sure when I came here what I was going to get out of this. So this was really cool. I wasn't expecting all this. So I have a little bit of a backstory that I swear leads to a question because I really do want to get advice from people that have a lot of experience because I don't. I run a community tennis league out at Roding Park. We operate every Tuesday. We have everybody come out, usually between 50, 60 people, all various skill levels. So I got a membership at CMAC because I wanted to film a commercial to advertise it, just let people know, hey, you can come out and play tennis on Tuesdays. It's free. And just show a little bit of the behind the scenes of what we're doing out there. And I think I was in two over my head because it was absolute train wreck because I got all the equipment and I went out there and it was just too much to try to manage the event and to try to film stuff and do interviews and try to make content. So I really walked away with nothing, but I learned a ton from that because I realized the position that you have is so valuable because you have to plan things ahead of time and you have to make sure the people that you want to be involved, well, you need people involved. I didn't have anybody because I didn't really think that far ahead. I thought I could just take the camera and make something happen. So my question is for you guys, as you guys started out, you had smaller productions. Like what are the essential positions if you're gonna look for somebody, even if it's a friend and you wanna tell them, this is the position you're gonna have. Like what is the hierarchy of positions you wanna cover first so I can tell people, even if they're just my friends, this is your role. Like I want you doing this.
That's it. Okay. That's a very difficult question to answer specifically because it depends on your strengths. And what you've learned is delegation, right? You've learned what you need people to cover, right? Like gaps in your skill set, perhaps, or your time even, which is almost more important than skills, right? Where you physically cannot be in two places at once, or you cannot handle these things, right? So you need somebody else to do it. Just in general, right? Like analyze your strengths. If you're really good at writing and scheduling, but not great as far as operating a camera, there's your answer, right? If you're great at operating a camera, but doing sound is a headache, there's your answer. I always get a sound guy, right? I always try to get a PA because you know you're just going to need an extra set of hands on set. Like, I don't know what you're going to be doing, but it'll make me feel a lot better if you're available to help out, right? So things like that, right? Just kind of look at your processes. And I'm trying to answer this in a very general sense, right? Because the short answer is hire someone like me and we'll film you a commercial, no problem. Let me know your budget. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
I mean, tennis clubs have memberships. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
But I would say, I mean, that's so true. Like analyzing what you're good at and then figuring out what you actually want to do on set and then finding people to do the rest. We actually, I mean, not to plug CMAC so much, but we actually just did a workshop called How to Cover an Event at the FCC Photo Video Expo, and that was by Davey. And he does the FAB program here, which is they go out and cover cultural, like, arts and cultural events around Fresno, and typically they have him there where he's like the producer who's managing all the camera crew, and there's like 3 camera crew, and this is just like a general idea you might like want to emulate, but they have 3 camera crew, but what he does in the beginning is he says, okay, you 2 are gonna grab B-roll, so just go around and film B-roll. You're in charge of interviews, but that's not gonna be till later, so go grab some B-roll over here. So you have like, if you know what you want covered, you want like the person who's doing tennis or whatever. I don't actually play sports, sorry. But if you have like, you want the full court covered and you want some audience shots, like you have to do a little bit of pre-production to kind of figure out how many cameras you might need. And then once you know that, you have your answer, I need 3 people and I'm gonna be the producer, right? So like that's kind of a thing. Also like on-camera mics are great for B-roll and then lav mics for the interviews, and just keep it as simple as possible. If it's like an event coverage situation, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, consultations are available for free, by the way. I'm happy to answer some questions later if you want to ask more specifically.
1 hour consultations at CMAC.
Yeah.
Plugging CMAC, sorry. Okay, good. Any other questions? But did that help a little bit, maybe? Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, got a question over there.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for doing this. I guess I just sort of had a question about funding and financing, especially as it regards to, let's say, outside the box material. In terms of, there's trying to communicate a creative or a genre idea or that sort of thing with someone who may not have that kind of experience or that interest, and the normies out there. So I wondered if you guys had any kind of advice as far as discussing your film creatively or discussing your work creatively with people that aren't necessarily creative people themselves.
Yeah.
Stop talking to normies. And I say that sarcastically, but I mean that. Like, if you're not finding the right person to fund your project, then maybe you should try to find the right person to fund your project, right? Because you can only run up the wall so many times before you start hurting yourself, and you're just not going to make any, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So, if it's outside the box, if people aren't around you, aren't willing to fund it, then find other people, man. I mean, there's online, which is just sometimes a further reach than, the people that you might be able to meet elsewhere, right? But there are times too is realizing that, there's a certain amount of a passion that we'll have for a project, and whether that passion requires the budget. Because, I mean, the projects you did, so I'm not saying you weren't passionate about them, right? Mm-hmm. But you still got them done, right? And that's super passionate. Mm-hmm. And I know there's ideas that I'd like to do that I could probably call in some favors and get done. But then there's other ideas where it's I'm gonna wait a little bit, because those are the ones I'm gonna want to do 100%, 110%, and those ones I'm gonna want to fund. So you kind of get, weigh the options.
Yeah, that's finding the right person to fund your film is a great point. And I think also, as from a marketing standpoint, when I was in advertising, people get razzle-dazzled by slideshows that are really cool. So pitch decks, that's a great way to do it. And then you have to get in their mindset. So this is also another advertising tip. But if they're money people, talk money to them. You know what I mean? If they're people who are creative, talk creative with them. You have to know which people you're talking to, because the money people are not often creative people, unfortunately. And this is just kind of advice from being in advertising and not necessarily in filmmaking, because I haven't done film funding yet. I'm looking for that next step too, because a lot of the things I want to do require funding. And I think looking at competitions also, because the Big Tell gives you a $5,000 stipend to create your film, and they don't tell you what you need to use that for. So what I did was I bought a camera. So that was how I was only able to afford a Blackmagic camera. That's crazy. I could never get that myself. So you're funding your own dreams most of the time, which is hard. Mm-hmm. But there are creative ways. There's competitions. There's Indiegogo, or things like Spark, something there's crowdfunding sources. Grants, yes, grants for sure.
Art grants.
For documentaries and art, yeah. Documentaries have a lot of grants available. So grants, competitions, things like that. And then also, telling your friends and getting small donations. And then maybe asking if they know anybody who might be interested in doing that, and just kind of talking to creative people is a good, asking them where they get their funding sometimes is a good way to do it. It might be weird to ask somebody, but it's good to ask questions. I don't think that's harmful, but yeah, that would be my advice. Razzle-dazzle them with a pitch deck. So,
thank you.
Any other questions by chance? Cool. All right, going once, going twice. All right.
Sweet.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.